12 minutes past 8, and here's a story that will affect lots of families watching this morning, because half of the state-funded schools for children with special educational needs and disabilities in England are oversubscribed as they struggle to meet growing demand for places. That's according to new BBC research out this morning.
Head teachers have resorted to converting staff rooms and even cupboards into teaching spaces due to a lack of space. Our education correspondent Elaine Dunkley has more.
This is Maltby Hilltop School in Rotherham. Like many specialist schools across the country, there is pressure on places.
Hello, Freya. Doing some fantastic walking.
The classrooms and corridors are cramped and overcrowded as they take on more pupils. 10 years ago, they had 82 pupils. Now they have 134, and there is a waiting list.
How much of your time do you spend looking for space?
Well, I mean, it's continual. I mean, mentally and physically, I go around this school time and time again to try and find available space. And this is a case in point. What I'm about to show you, this was a former resource cupboard, but now we have members of the visual impairment therapy team conducting therapy with our children in this space.
In a resource cupboard?
In a resource cupboard. Afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm ashamed. As the head teacher of this school, I genuinely do feel it's shameful that this is what we are providing for our children. And also, I know it could be so much better for them. They deserve so much better.
We are clicking customers.
So what is causing pressure on places? There is increasing diagnosis of special educational needs. Some mainstream schools are struggling to cope.
We're going to watch that tennis game.
Funding is an issue. Local authorities' high-need budgets are tight. And new specialist schools aren't being built quick enough to cope with the rising demand for places.
Being able to break out into a space is so important for our kids. So you have a number of children up on the yard enjoying time outside, but then for some young people in crisis, they need access to a breakout space. We don't have those spaces.
It's lunchtime and the children eat in classrooms. The dinner hall is now being used for therapy.
Yes, very soon, Jack. Dinner time.
We're a little bit cramped.
So we're always a little bit cramped. What's going on?
In a small kitchen, Sarah is teaching vital life skills for those in sixth form. The lack of space makes it difficult.
It's not ideal at all. We can't have more than 4 or 5 people in this room. And I have got 7 children in my pizza club, and there's 4 members of staff.
Do you want pizza? Yeah.
What I want for these children is what I'd want for my own children. This is like my nest, and they are the birds, my little chicks. And I want them to fly, and I want them to flourish.
Some pupils have had to leave the school because they can't cope with the overcrowding. Sarah was hoping this day wouldn't come. She's in school to collect her son Cohen's belongings. He's no longer able to learn in the noisy cramped porter cabins and is now at home.
I've just seen his tray. This is his tray. Cohen's work. It's really sad to see it because this is where he should be. And he should be learning and he should be with his friends. He started to have panic attacks, hyperventilating. He wants to be here, but the space is not allowing it. It's hard to see him, and he's not engaging in anything other than the same monotonous daily routine.
Make him jump.
Emma has come to have a look around with daughter Georgie. She's faced delays getting an education and healthcare plan, a legal document outlining the support Georgie needs. And now there's more delay as she waits for a school place to become available.
It makes me well up, to be honest, because by the time she'll be coming here in September next year, that'll be 2 years out of education. So to see her today with the other children and being somewhere where I know she really, really wants to be, it chokes you up.
Is there enough recognition of what happens in schools like yours?
No, because we shut up and get on with it. That's the problem, and we put up with it, and we do the best that we can for the good of the kids. But there comes a point, there comes a breaking point, and we are at utter capacity, so something has to be done.
In a statement, the government says it's providing £2.6 billion between now and 2025 to help deliver new school places. This is a school which celebrates every success.
Look at you in the pool, on the trampoline, washing your hands.
But this head teacher is worried that far too many children are being failed by the lack of space and resources in specialist schools across England. Elaine Dunkley, BBC News in Rotherham.
We are joined now by Anne Longfield, who is the former Children's Commissioner for England, and Debbie Sweet, who is the head of a specialist school in West Yorkshire. Morning to both of you. Debbie, if I could come to you first of all, morning. Start of a busy week for you, I'm sure.
Good morning.
I'm just interested to know, listening to that report and hearing about the findings, I'm imagining they're not much of a surprise to you.
No, you could have been talking about our school here. You could have been talking about our school for the last 5-10 years. It's exactly the same situation for us. We have had to look at every available space and be as creative and innovative as possible to problem solve. To create teaching spaces. The room that I'm sitting in this morning talking to you used to be a physiotherapy space where physiotherapists and orthotics could come and work with children in the school. It's now a classroom. We've had to turn it into a classroom. We had a coal-fired boiler that we got rid of and looked innovatively at putting different systems in schools so we could turn the boiler house into a classroom. I could go on, very similar to the head teacher that was in your film just now.
And Debbie, you're over capacity, are you?
We are over capacity, so I've been the head teacher at Highbury for 10 years now. When I joined the school, we had 60 children on roll. We've now got 104 as of today. The school was built for 40 children originally, 25 plus years ago. And although we've expanded and we've worked with the local authority to expand, we are completely out of floor space now. We've met our footprint several times over. We can't find any more space to do anything else with the children that we've got coming in. And sadly, you know, our children are the lucky ones. Our children have got a place, and it shouldn't feel like that. It shouldn't feel like luck that your child is in a place that's right for them and is appropriate for their needs. If I can just give you some context, we've got 10 children leaving our main site here in July, which opens up 10 places for September 2023. As of today, because more have arrived during half term, I've had 70 requests for those places.
70?
So 70 requests
70?
for 10 places. 70 requests for 10 places in our main school. So the 10 children that get a place, brilliant, fantastic. You're going to be in an outstanding school. You're going to get really great outcomes from an incredibly dedicated staff team. But the 60 that don't, who knows? And some of those children tend to do the rounds. So they come up time and time again. And they're either in schools and really struggling to manage in those mainstream schools, despite many, many best efforts from colleagues in mainstream schools. But too often, and sadly, as in the film that you showed, some of those children aren't in educational settings at the moment, and they're at home on their sofas, and they deserve to be in school with an appropriate peer group, with a personalised curriculum being taught by specialist staff. And sadly, that's not the case.
Debbie, how on earth do you decide? How do you know who gets a place?
I'm really pleased to say that's not my decision. It's the local authority's decision. I get the paperwork that comes through. I have to read it carefully and consider it. But too often we have open evenings here. So we'll have 3, maybe 4 open evenings a year that are attended by 30, 40 people every single time. I dread the question when they ask me, how many places do you have? And I say 10. And they look around the room and they count the heads that are in the room and their faces drop. And they go into fight mode, these parents, and that is the language that they use, unfortunately. So at a time in their life when they should be really excited about their child starting school, they've already had to come to terms with the fact that their child needs specialist education. They've had to come to terms with the fact that their child may have a disability and additional needs. And then at a time when they should be excited, like I was when my children started school, they're being told to fight, and fight is what they do. And the anxiety that these causes these parents it's devastating for these families.
Debbie,
I
we
don't
can
know how
sense
they do it.
your...
I don't know how they stay so positive.
Yeah, and indeed, we can sense your frustration as
I
you
could
talk
go
to
on.
us. Yeah, we will come back to you in a moment. So stay there, but let's turn to Anne, because Anne, you were Children's Commissioner for what, 6 years? Mm-hmm. What do you make of these figures, this story this morning? Does it come of any surprise to you?
Well, sadly, this is very familiar, and it's an issue that is getting worse rather than better. The pandemic had its role in that. But what we're seeing is an education system that just isn't coping. It's creaking at the seams for those children with very specialist needs at the high end, and for those children who have lower level needs but still need help and support, they're often not getting it in school. And as you've heard, parents will be frantic with worry, assessments will take time, and teachers just say they don't have the skills to be able to understand and respond to those needs, a lot of them. So it's a system that children are falling out of. We see floods of children that are now being educated at home because they can't get the support they need in schools. We've got an ongoing problem with exclusions, and you're 7 times more likely to be excluded if you've got a special educational need. And we've got tens of thousands of children that are persistently or chronically absent from school because they can't go back into that school. So children are falling through the gaps, and this is because the system is under-resourced and essentially broken.
So it needs fixing, clearly. Is it just money? Is it just the lack of resources, or does the system need a fundamental rethink?
Well, money's important, and there'll be a lot of head teachers will say that. They'll say they want to be able to help, but don't have the resources to do so. But it is also about the culture of the school. Now, we've had a system of schools for the last 10 years that have rewarded academic achievement and grades. And of course, everyone knows that's really important, but not if it means that some children who need extra help aren't able to achieve as well. And essentially, we're writing off a lot of children who need that extra help. So we need a much more inclusive approach to school. We need schools that are there for everyone, teachers that are skilled being able to support those children, and schools that work alongside parents with the resources on hand to be able to get them that extra therapeutic help, extra educational psychologists, all the things that those children will need to essentially flourish.
I mean, the government says it's spending the money, doesn't it? I mean, the Department for Education says they've increased high needs funding by 50% in the last couple of years to £10 billion, and they're spending an extra £2.6 billion on capital funding for new places. That sounds like an awful lot of money. You would expect that money would mean that there were not kids being held in cupboards.
Yeah, but ask any head teacher what that means, and there are so many demands on that pot of money, be it fuel increases, be it extra pay for teachers, be that all the things that they want to spend, but nonetheless those are the things that means budgets are very tight, and they've had a huge decrease in budgets over the last 10 years, only just getting back to where they were. So there's a lot of demands. People want to do it, but they need that leadership and need that capacity and support.
Really interesting, Anne. Debbie, I could just see you nodding all the way through that answer just then. For head teachers like yourself, it's incredibly difficult, isn't it?
It's frustrating more than anything, because it's not that we're not prepared to work creatively and problem solve. That's what we do, and we put the children at the heart of all of that. So nothing's too much trouble for our staff. My premises manager comes in on Saturdays, you know, to turn rooms into teaching spaces ready for Monday. But it's that compromise and that level of sacrifice that comes with that. There's always a payoff. Whatever we do, there's always a payoff. And we've reached the end of that. It's not sustainable any longer. The money will be great, of course it will, but it's too late. It's too little and too late for me. This has not happened overnight. This is a crisis that has been growing for years and years. And why we haven't been aware in terms of sufficiency of places before now, it shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone. It certainly doesn't come as a surprise to any of the head teachers working in the sector right now.
Thank you both. Debbie, I know you've got a massively busy day, as usual, ahead of you, so we'll let you get back to the kids there. And thank you very much indeed for coming in. And there's more on that story as well. There's a longer documentary on the BBC iPlayer. It's called Send Help, S-E-N-D, Help, and it's available to watch now.
Breakfast is here on BBC One until 9:15, when Morning Live, of course,